How terrible for the land of whirring wings, which lies beyond the river of Sudan. It sends the messenger by sea in the boats made of reeds, skimming over the surface of the water. Go swiftly, messengers, to the tall and smooth-skinned people, the people who are feared far and near. People fear those great nations. Who is divided by the river? Look at someone raises a flag on the mountains. Listen, someone blows the ram's horn. I should bring my horn, my ram's horn. I have at home. I use it at the hearing church for the Passover. They have the horn, and I've taught a few of the children, not children, but children, to play the ram's horn. It's got a very, very tight, and it's hard to make sounds with. But when you blow it, the sound goes way far. You can hear it far, far away. Listen, someone blows the ram's horn, and you people of the world who live on earth, this is what the Lord says to me. Isaiah. I will keep quiet and watch from my dwelling place on high. My presence will be like a scorching fire in the sunshine, like a heavy, heavy dew in the heat of the harvest. Last night, my friend, who is my cowboy, we walked outside of my home, and he said, humid. This is talking about humidity. Dew and heat, join them together, and it feels like Nebraska should feel in July and August. We should feel hot and wet. The air, like cut a piece out, chew it, because it is so thick, the air. And this summer has been very dry. You cannot feel the humidity in the air. But this says very, very humid. And if you've ever gone over to Africa, any of you go to Africa, very, very hot and wet feeling. Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, all of those countries are very, very humid feeling. Before the harvest, when the blossoms are gone and the grapes are beginning to plump, they will cut off the shoots with pruning shears. They will chop off the branches, and they will be left for the birds to pick on the mountains. The animals, the wild animals, will come and eat them all. The birds of prey will eat them in the summer, and all of the wild animals on the earth will feed on Bethlehem all winter. At that time, gifts will be brought to the Lord of armies from the tall and the smooth-skinned people, the people who are feared far and near, the strong and aggressive nation whose land is divided by rivers. They will be brought to Mount Zion, the place that is named for the Lord of armies. What does this mean? Do we send missionaries to Sudan? We send the people to teach those poor African people about Jesus, right? Right now, there are more Lutherans in Africa than in America. It's true. There are more Lutherans, yes. And Sudan, my friends, I was the teacher for one of them to become a pastor. His name is Simon Yeach, and he lives in Des Moines. When I was preaching at the Deaf Church in Des Moines, I became his teacher to become a pastor. So he is now a pastor for almost 8 years. He is a pastor now. And Sudan, those smooth-skinned people are now honoring the God, the Lord of armies. And they are going to the mountain. This is a very, very special verse for the smooth-skinned, darkest-skinned black people. Their nation is divided by the waters. You know what that means? There is the Nile River. It begins down south and it flows north to Egypt. And when it goes to Egypt, it pours out into the sea near Egypt. The Sudan is further south, where it doesn't begin in Sudan, but there are two Nile rivers. The one is called the Blue Nile, and the other one is called the White Nile. The Blue Nile, it comes through Sudan, and in northern Sudan, it becomes the White Nile. So really, there are two rivers. Sudan is on the west side, and Ethiopia is on the east side of the river. And really, they say we were all one nation long ago. And many of the Christian people who were afraid for their lives, the Muslims were killing many, many Christian people, died because the Muslims permitted any Christian you find, kill them, it's fine. Slaves, they can become slaves. It was law. You can't make any person who says, I am a Christian, can become your slave. And all of the black people who are mad at the white people in America because we stole the people from Africa to bring them here as slaves, they are mad at the white people, right? The white people made the black people slaves.
Well,
Okay.
a black person.
Who sold the black people to the white people? The black people would conquer a nation. If Ed was my neighboring nation, I was black, he was black, we would fight, and if I beat him, then I would drag him to the white ships and sell him. But if he would beat me, then he would drag me to the white ships to sell me. So it was not the white people who were selling the black slaves first. It was the black people who were selling the black slaves. And still in Africa, there are still many, many slaves. My uncle lived in Libya. You know where that is?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of north central Africa, north, that area. It's over from Egypt. It is west. That area in Libya had a lot of oil. And my uncle was an oil man. So he was checking. He's the one that finds the oil. So he went over there and tested all of the country. Tested. Here is the best place to drill to shoot up the oil. And when he lived there, he would come back to the USA and he would tell us, yeah, it's nice. Living is different. He had 2 sons. Now he has 3. 2 sons back then. And he said, yeah, the 2 boys are taken care of by our houseboy. A young man about 16 years old that would clean the house, cook, take care of the children. His wife, fancy lady, she would go out and mingle with the snotty crowd. And the houseboy would take care of the children. And I was dumb. I asked, how much does it cost, a week? You have to pay the houseboy, right? I was dumb. My parents didn't know either. But when I asked, he said, no. We don't pay the boy. Really, the boy's parents sold their son to my uncle. And my uncle bought the slave from his father and mother. And he lived in my uncle's house and ate better than if he was living, with a job, working out in Africa. He could not live at that high a standard of living. But when my uncle, Libya, decided they would kill all of the Americans, and my uncle had to leave quickly, the boy begged my uncle, please take me to America, because if you leave me here, I am the slave of a white person. They will kill me. My uncle tried to get a visa that he could bring him to America, and Libya refused to grant the visa, so he had to leave him in Africa. And my uncle knew that he was hoping they would not kill him. He told him, you are free, go on back home to your parents and maybe they will believe that you were not my slave. But the parents had sold their son as a slave to my uncle. And the living is different there. Mm-hmm. Yes, Marcus. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 But chapter 18 promises that the country of Sudan will know the Lord. And today, I mean, there are more Christian people in Sudan than here in Nebraska. Our district has a partnership with Sudan, the Southern Sudanese Evangelical Lutheran Church of Sudan is partners with the District of Nebraska, and they work together. President Somerville is very proud that he has gone over there, I think twice now, gone over to Sudan to visit. And my friend, who is still preaching in Des Moines, has gone back many times. The first time that we sent him back, I told you before, I sent him back, he baptized 85 members of his tribe and baptized his own father and made 40 new members through confirmation, 40 people into the Lutheran Church himself. Just one trip there. So, many people coming to know the Lord in Sudan.
Yeah, Pastor Reich also travels to Africa too.
Yeah, the Ghana. That is the west side, and Sudan is the east side. So they are kind of far apart. But yeah, I think that it is wonderful that Pastor Reich was there in Western Africa and taught. There were 8 men who were learning to become evangelists. They should have ordained one man to become a pastor and then taught that man how to teach other deaf people to become pastors. They should not, rely on America. They should teach the one man, bring him here to America, and teach him to become a pastor himself, and then send him back. They don't need 8 evangelists. They need one pastor who can then become the teacher to make many other pastors himself. And that would be a good idea. I think it would be a much better idea.
Yeah.
They need to have their own church with their own leaders. It's like saying, deaf people need a hearing person to lead them.
Or a blind person?
Oh, yeah. Deaf people need a blind person to lead them.
Now you gotta give time to use that in the sermon today.
But the hearing people should not be the leader, the responsible group for the deaf church. We had a big hamburger and ice cream celebration last week. And there were many of the young people who came. And again, I told some of the young deaf people, I am old, I am fat, I am bald, I am blind. We need you to become a pastor for the deaf people, not me. And the deaf man, I told him, you should be the leaders of the church. Deaf people don't need hearing people to lead them. My brother would be an excellent pastor, but he couldn't take the cut in pay. Many of the deaf men, they say, I can't take the cut in pay. To become a pastor for a deaf church is not a rich job. I wish. Yeah. 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 My own friend, Mark Anderson, over in Cedar Rapids now, but 7 years he had to leave the ministry. He had to leave and become a VR person for Illinois instead of preaching for a deaf church because all of the closings of the deaf churches. Crazy. Yeah. No, yeah. I interpreted at the seminary. But we graduated together. Pastor Mark Anderson and myself graduated together. When I was at the seminary, there were 5 men themselves, deaf, who were at the seminary. One of them graduated. No, two of them graduated. Mark Anderson and Eddie Bergstresser, who is now in Columbus, Ohio. Yeah. In Ohio. And he himself is deaf. His wife is deaf. The one seminary professor, he is from India, and his son is deaf. And I don't think it is a legal adoption, but his son lived with the deaf man and woman, Eddie and his wife, just lived in their home. They could not bear any children, and so the professor at the seminary from India said, I have a deaf son, he is yours. And gave the son to the dad and mom. And still, Anand is the name of the son. And still, I'm friends with them on Facebook. And it is fun to see dad and mom still conversing with their son, who is graduated from college probably 8-10 years ago. Graduated from college, and he's out in the world, but still calls the dad and mom his dad and mom, but his real father is still teaching at the seminary. But he feels, this is my deaf dad and mom. Yeah. Columbus. Yeah. Oh, Pencil?
No,
Perk.
My,
Pastor Perk.
came 2 years ago.
Okay.
He's retired.
Deaf church?
Well, he can come here. He got here before. Now he's retired.
Okay.
Now, Cleveland.
Yeah. Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland.
No, not Cleveland.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Columbus, Eddie has been there for 29 years. He's been 29 years in Columbus. So he's been the pastor of that deaf church for 29 years. A long time. But My friend, my vicar in Canada, deaf himself. My vicar over in Australia, himself, deaf. Yeah. And the only Lutheran deaf church in all of the country of Australia, he himself is deaf, and he was my vicar for 1 year. "23 years ago."
And your vicar here,
Yeah, Australia, wonderful, wonderful man. But my vicars, 2 of them were deaf.
and one of your vicars, your first vicar that came here, now working with Illinois Deaf.
Yeah, well, but that was my vicar. That was St. Paul and Bethlehem.
I still feel technically it's your vicar because he was learning deaf ministry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In Des Moines, 23 years ago, deaf man John Hooper. Did you meet John way back when?
I don't think so. I only met David.
Yeah, the last.
Yeah, and
Yes.
Brian Smith.
Smith, yeah, and Tim Ecker.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, chapter 19, Egypt will be punished. Okay? The divine revelation about Egypt. The Lord is riding fastly on the clouds, fastly moving against Egypt. The idols will tremble, and all of the country of Egypt, their courage will fail. I will turn to one Egyptian against, I will turn one Egyptian person against the other Egyptian person. Brothers will fight against brothers, and neighbor will fight against neighbor. The city, one will fight against the other city. Kingdom against kingdom. Egypt will lose its courage, and I will unravel their plans. They will turn to the idols and turn to ghosts and mediums and fortune tellers. I will give the Egyptians to a harsh master. A strong king will come and rule them, declares the Almighty Lord of armies. The water of the Nile will become dry. The river will become empty. The canals will stink. Egyptians' springs will be empty and dry, and the reeds and the cattails will wither. The rushes by the Nile, the edge of the river, will die and blow away, disappear. Fishermen will cry, and all of the people who cast their nets into the Nile will mourn. Those people who gather the fish, the water will sigh. The workers who make, who weave cloth will become ashamed, and the Egyptian people will be crushed. Those people who work for money will be distressed. The leaders of Zion are nothing but fools. Oh, of Zoan are fools. Zion? Zoan are fools. The wisest Pharaoh, the counselor, is stupid advice. How can you tell a Pharaoh, I am descended from ancient kings? Where are your wise men now? Let them tell you. Let those people who advised you before explain. The Lord of armies is planning against Egypt. The leaders of Zoan are acting foolishly. The leaders of Memphis are led astray. The leaders who are the support of the tribes mislead Egypt. And the Lord mixes up their minds so that they lead the Egyptian people astray like a drunk person staggers and vomits. No one will follow the leaders. The important or unimportant can do anything for Egypt. At that time, women, the Egyptian people will act like women. Is that an insult to act like women? They will tremble with fear because the Lord of armies will shake his fist at them. The country of Judah will terrify the Egyptian people. Judah will remind them they will be terrified because of what the Lord of armies is planning against Egypt. When that day occurs, 5 cities in Egypt will have people that speak the language of the Jews and swear allegiance to the Lord of armies. One of the cities will be called Heliopolis. When that day occurs, the altar of the Lord will be set up in the middle of Egypt, and a stone marker will be there for the Lord near the border. These objects will be a sign and a witness that the Lord of armies is in Egypt. When the people cry and shout to the Lord because of those who oppress them, he will send a Savior and defender to rescue them. For the Lord will make himself known in Egypt, and the Egyptians know the Lord. That occurs, that day comes, they will know the Lord, and they will worship with sacrifices and food offerings. They will make vows to the Lord and do that. The Lord will strike Egypt with a plague. When he strikes them, he will also heal them. And they will come back to the Lord, and he will respond to their prayers. He will heal them. When that day comes, the highway from Egypt to Assyria, the highway will become what the Assyrians will come to Egypt, and the Egyptians will go to Assyria, and all of the Egyptians will worship with the Assyrians, and that day Israel will, 1/3 of God's people, along with the Egyptians and the Assyrians, and they will be blessed by God, his people on earth. The Lord of armies will bless the three, saying, my people Egypt is the work of my hands. Assyria is my possession, and Israel is blessed. So 3 countries that he will choose from Egypt, from Israel, and from Assyria. All 3 of them.
I have a different translation for verse 18 for Helipalius. It said, city of the sun or city of destruction.
Mm-hmm. Well, Heli is normally sun. Heliopolis, like metropolis, city of bigness, or the city of the sun. The reason, what is the Egyptians' number 1 god? The sun.
Yeah.
And the city will be called Heliopolis, not because they are worshiping the sun now.
But like I said, it also said the city of destruction too.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, questions? Morning, Larry. C-O-R-N-Y.
Cornelius?
Cornerstone.
Oh, Cornish.
Oh, the cornerstone. I'm sorry. Blank. I'm sorry. Yeah. The cornerstone. Yeah. There are a few important stones in a building. There is the beginning stone. When we built this church, there is a cornerstone out here. If you go outside and you walk around, you will see the stone. It is the first stone that is set. Oftentimes, it will be empty in the middle, and we will have the papers for the church in that stone. The name of the members, the name of the pastor, all of the information about the church will be rolled up and put into the stone, and then the rest of the building is built around that stone, being the most important stone. This has all of the information of the church in the stone on the corner. The corner out here. And oftentimes they have a time capsule. They have the old-fashioned things. Oh, our new things. We would take an iPod and put it in there. We would have the computer disk, put it in there. We would have the information, put it in the stone if we were building it today. back then, they had the old-fashioned things of the 1950s here. We would put out there in the stove to remind people about the church. And, yeah. Yeah. Oftentimes, yeah. 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 Then when you tear the church down, you can look inside. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Read it all. The three stones, the cornerstone is the first stone of the church. Okay, the cornerstone is the first stone that all of the rest of the church is built around this. The other two stones, normally a church will have a huge door, and the arch, the top stone is called the key stone. Okay, you know that area of Omaha. If you go over to like 72nd and Maple, and you go up Maple on the north side, the neighborhood is called Keystone, because the archway you would build with square blocks up, and then you need to turn them so that they are
in a rectangle area.
square blocks, square blocks, square blocks, but
Oh yeah.
the arch, this block that sets down, is called the keystone. Okay? And then the stone that, again, at the very top, the last stone that they set in a building, the last stone is the cap stone. And that's the last stone of the building. And it is the one big, strong stone at the top of the building. And so you have the keystone, the cap stone, and the cornerstone. The first stone, the last stone, and the top stone.
It's almost time, Pastor Coy.
Yeah. Time to go upstairs to worship.